behavior has consequences. And this case illustrates what those consequences can be. Mr. Ramirez is in front of you today asking for you to make it all better, when it was his belligerent choices that put Officer Waldman in the unenviable position to make the sort of choice he had to make on the night of December 7th, 1996. Robert Ramirez would have you find Officer Waldman and the City of Chicago Police Department liable according to the theory of negligence. And plaintiff's counsel is right. Negligence is about reasonableness and whether or not Officer Waldman acted reasonably when he shot Robert Ramirez in the back. And in order to make this determination, you are going to have to look at all the facts, and you are going to have to use your own common sense to come to a decision whether or not you believe that Officer Waldman acted reasonably. But it's important for you to remember that Mr. Ramirez has the burden of proof in showing that Officer Waldman acted negligently. And a review of the facts will show that Officer Waldman was simply doing his job that night when he was put in a position where he had no other choice than to shoot Robert Ramirez, because the alternative was that his partner, Officer Levy, be seriously injured or even killed. Let's look at the facts. Robert Ramirez went out drinking on the night in question. He made a choice to go out drinking with his friends. He made a choice by bringing beer. He made a choice by then going to 2 bars after he was at his friend's house. And then after that, Robert Ramirez made a choice to get in his vehicle and drive himself home, even though he had been drinking for several hours. When Robert Ramirez came upon Officer Waldman and Officer Levy, he made another choice. He made the choice to engage them and try to start an altercation. And when Officer Levy pulled the car over to let Mr. Ramirez pass, Mr. Ramirez made yet another choice: not to pass, not to go home to his family. Rather, he wanted to get into an altercation with the 2 men in this car. Officer Waldman made a choice that night. He made a choice that in order to save his partner's life, he was going to have to use deadly force by shooting Robert Ramirez. He did make that one choice. Robert Ramirez made a string of choices that night that were irresponsible, that were belligerent, and that put him in a position for Officer Waldman to have to make the decision that he made. I think that when you look at the whole picture, and you keep in mind that it is the plaintiff that has the burden to show that Officer Ramirez acted unreasonably, there really is only one conclusion. And that conclusion is that Robert Ramirez's belligerent behavior put Officer Waldman in a position where he had to use deadly force. In the short amount of time that Officer Waldman had to make a decision, after seeing this man come upon them, pick a fight, and brandish a knife, Officer Waldman had no choice but to do what he thought he needed to do so that Officer Levy didn't end up seriously wounded or, even worse, dead. Now, plaintiff's counsel has made a really large issue out of the knife in this case. And I would urge you, ladies and gentlemen, to remember that Officer Thomas testified that he independently found that knife at the scene and that he put it into evidence. Now, the plaintiff would have you believe that because there's no fingerprints and no blood on the knife must have been planted. But there are other reasons why the knife may not have had blood or may not have had fingerprints. You have to remember that this knife was handled. It was handled not only by Officer Thomas, but it was handled by other techs at the police department. Now, the fact that it doesn't have the blood or the fingerprints on it, it may mean that one of the techs accidentally handled it too roughly. It may mean that it accidentally was wiped with something else or put too close to something else. But when you look at all the facts together, the drinking, the instigating of the fight, the wound that Officer Levy was treated for, and the fact that this knife was recovered, don't be dissuaded by what could be explained by a tech maybe making a mistake with the evidence. There's enough other evidence in this case for you to find for the defense. Again, I implore you to use your common sense in making this decision. Robert Ramirez acted belligerently. He went out with his friends and he drank. He made decisions to drive home despite the fact that he'd been drinking all day. He made the decision to instigate an altercation with these police officers who were just trying to do their jobs. And he brandished a knife, putting Officer Waldman in a position to have to make a decision what to do in order to stop his partner from being seriously wounded or killed. And the police manual says the standard that we're looking at, which is reasonableness, and says that if Officer Waldman felt like his life was in danger, or if he felt like he had to shoot Mr. Ramirez in order to prevent serious bodily injury or death to his partner, Officer Levy, then he was acting reasonably and he was justified in shooting Mr. Ramirez. So, ladies and gentlemen, we ask you to use your common sense to understand that from the viewpoint of the officers who were doing nothing but doing their jobs, Mr. Ramirez's behavior was belligerent. There was a knife found at the scene which supports the testimony of the officers, which was that Mr. Ramirez brandished a knife and was threatening Officer Levy. And as such, we ask you to find for the defendants in this matter. Thank you very much.